2-3708.2A3, Virginia Code Section 15.2-1413, the city's continuity of government ordinance adopted on March 31st, 2020, and Chapter 854 of the 2019 Acts of Assembly as amended. With me, the chair of the Virginia Beach and Rice Commission, have called this meeting for today's monthly meeting. Please note that the meeting is being recorded. And now I'll pass the mic to our liaison, Dominique, for roll call. Hello? Did everybody hear that?
Yes, we did.
Okay.
Sorry about that. I was troubleshooting login for David, but he is coming. He's going to try on the audio because he can't get through the link. So I want to start off commissioners, liaisons, and staff with a review of procedures for our meeting today. First, please mute any additional devices you have in your room to avoid any echoing or reverberation. Please remember to use your virtual hand, which is at the bottom of your participant panel. If you haven't opened that already, you can find the participant panel by hovering on your screen, and you'll see a row of icons. You'll see a microphone, a camera, so on and so forth. And the one you're looking for is like a little person. You want to click on that, and then that will open your participation panel. And at the very bottom of the panel, you will see a hand symbol. Okay, so please use that hand symbol when you want to make any questions or have any comments. When your name is being called to be recognized to speak, please pause for 3 seconds to ensure that your microphone is unmuted and everyone can hear your complete remarks. Please begin your comments by identifying yourself and state that you're finished when you are done with your comment or question. Are there any questions from the commission about these procedures? Anybody? Okay. If there are no questions, then I will begin our roll call.
It appears that Jamal has raised his virtual hand.
Oh, okay. Jamal, you had a question?
Yeah, I'm just saying hi, Dominique.
Hi, Jamal. Now remember, when you're done with your comment, you want to put down your virtual hand. Thank you.
Got you.
All right.
We can't see you, Jamal.
I know.
Okay, so now, as I said, now I will begin the roll call. I will unmute each of you one at a time, and please state that you are present. Commissioner Amberman? Commissioner Amberman?
Here.
Thank you. Commissioner Hazeltine?
Here.
Thank you. Commissioner Knight Thompson?
Here.
Thank you. Vice Chair Jenkott?
Here.
Thank you. Commissioner Gunn?
I'm here.
Thank you. Commissioner Burnsworth?
I'm here.
Thank you. Commissioner Rivera?
Present.
Thank you. Commissioner Stevens?
I'm here.
Thank you. Commissioner Rabbi Zoberman?
Present.
Thank you. And Chair Neri Strickland?
Present.
Thank you. Commissioner Stanley?
Here.
Thank you. And Commissioner Cubine?
Here.
Thank you. Okay, now I will pass the microphone over to Chairwoman Neri Strickland for our first speaker.
Okay, did we want to recognize our liaisons that are here?
Okay, we can go ahead and do that. Dr. Parrott?
Present.
Thank you. Mayor Dyer?
Present.
Thank you. Councilman Berlucci?
Present.
Thank you. Aurelius? Aurelius, you here?
Present. Yes, I'm here. Present.
Thank you. All right. Captain Norris and the rest of our sheriff's department?
They waved.
Okay. All right. Regina? Regina?
Present.
Thank you. Stacy?
Present.
Thank you. Rod?
Good afternoon.
Thank you. And Sheriff Zakara?
Police chief, yes, present.
I'm so sorry. I am so completely sorry, Chief Zakaro. Okay, now I will turn the microphone over to Chairwoman Mary Strickland.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, everyone. We're really pleased to have several guests today that asked to come speak to us. And first, I'd like to introduce and thank Mayor Dyer for taking us through these hard times. Mayor Dyer.
Hello, do you hear me?
Yes.
And
Hey, thank you all for being here and thank you for the opportunity to let me pop in on your time. And I can't tell you how much I appreciate you as an organization. I've had the privilege of being with you since 2004. And be assured that even though I'm in the mayor's position now, I am with you in heart and spirit. But let me just say what I know about you as a group for well over a decade now. Whenever the trials or tribulations of the city confront us, you always have risen to the occasion. And I tell you what, an eclectic group, I think we are a model of what should be. And I am confident going forward, in spite of the national turbulence that's going on, that Virginia Beach does have the potential to rise as the template for the rest of this nation to show how we can do things. You know, first of all, the strength of Virginia Beach are the people of the city, and the people that have served and currently serve on the Human Rights Commission are just a stellar example of that, on how we confront various problems. And the other thing is too, and I want to give a shout out to Chief Sicaro, who gave a magnificent presentation the other day about how our police department is so far ahead of the curve in many ways in trying to deal with the multiple problems out there. We are a safe city, but we are having, encountering some challenges. But I think the men and women of our police department and all of our public safety, whether it be the sheriff's office, EMS, and 911, we are a safe city for our size. But that being said, we have some challenges ahead of us. And I'm delighted to read about the implementation of the 2 task force with the COVID-19, which is obviously a necessary thing. And we proceeded at what I believe in a very safe way. It was important to get things open, but safely. And I think we did that. But, once again, when we talk about the human condition and talk about what COVID does to families and individuals, when we talk about depression and suicide and drug use and alcohol and domestic abuse, it's important that we try to get open in a safe and effective way, and and also to get our economy going, to get our people going. And so I think we're well on the way there. Our numbers have been of concern but acceptable, and we're moving forward in that ideal there. But also the racial tension task force. I can't think of a better group to confront the complexity of this problem. And anything I can do, Ron Taylor can tell you, and a number of other folks, I've been reaching out to multiple constituencies along the, the past few months. And, but once again, we've had a challenging year, from the tragedy of a year ago to the COVID. and, and then confronting, the racial tensions. But, I really think that, we have the group that, could really accommodate things in a big way. One of the areas of concern that I do noted, but let me say, I think I had the chance to read your annual report, and once again, it demonstrates a stellar performance of you all in, bringing our city to the next level. And also the mention in there about the monument. We were proceeding as prescriptive by law, where we couldn't take any action until July 1st. But hopefully you all know we have to have a mandatory public hearing, which has been scheduled for July 23rd. We're going to have it at the convention center, so to bring all voices to the table. And I applaud the Human Rights Commission for their recommendation and action in this regard. Now, I don't want to dominate the meeting and everything, but I just want to give my heartfelt thanks, because over the past year, the people that have gotten us through in a lot of ways are the people such as the Human Rights Commission. And as I said, recently at an event at, at one of the Rock Church, we're going to have a new normal, and the new normal could be in how we treat people, random acts of kindness and doing things and listening and understanding people. But these are all values that have been exemplified by the Human Rights Commission. And I just wanted to take this opportunity that during a tough time to thank you all for your dedication, hard work in a most noble cause. And for that, I thank you. And that's the end of my comments for now.
Thank you, Mayor, and we want to express our appreciation. Does anyone have any comments or questions for Mayor Dyer? I see none. Thank you very much, Mayor Dyer. I know you're busy.
And if you ever need me, give me a call. Thank you, and God bless all of you. Keep well.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
And moving right along, we also have Sheriff Stawley. This is the sheriff. We want to thank him too for all the hard work he's done, and welcome Sheriff Stawley.
As Bobby was, but I think that y'all do a great job, and I think we've had a great relationship, and I'd like to keep it that way. But I think that, over the last several months, we witnessed something I never thought I'd see in the United States, and we seem to be sinking to the lowest common denominator as opposed to raising people up and just attacking people. And I think that, something I learned in the Senate of Virginia's perception is sometimes reality. And so I would take great exception to anybody saying that the Sheriff's Department and the Police Department had a history of racial violence here. But I think the perception is that some people have the perception that we do have that. And I differ with that completely, but I recognize we have the perception and we have to deal with. And so I think that instead of reinventing the wheel and appointing a citizens commission or something like that, what I'd like to do is have the Human Rights Commission review our files every year, either twice a year, 4 times a year, whatever you want to, and we'll educate you. We'll bring you in here and give you classes. And I don't think the whole commission needs to do this, although they're welcome to do it. But I think we can have a small panel of commissioners do this and review our use of force. Last year we had a total of 305 uses of force in the jail situation. This year so far we have 128. What I recommend that we do is every 6 months or every year, take the files and let you have them, and so you can go through them and see whether you have any recommendations or whether or not we're doing complete investigations. Now, Rod will tell you that, my authority comes from the Constitution of Virginia and the statutes of Virginia. So I can't delegate to you the responsibility of disciplining these people. That's my responsibility. But I can delegate to you the review of that process to find out whether or not you have any recommendations. And I believe in transparency, and so I think that what we ought to do is publish your recommendations. Publish your findings and recommendations so that the public knows what you're finding and what you're recommending. And I think that, it'd be up to us to determine whether or not we're going to follow those recommendations. you'd be an advisory committee more than a policy committee, because I think that the Constitution requires that I implement the policies, but I would very much welcome your oversight on what we're doing. And I think that this is going to become a reality. I think that, police departments and sheriff's departments are going to be scrutinized by the public more frequently. And I think y'all are the perfect group to do it. And so that's what I wanted to pitch to you today. We'll educate whoever you want to sit over here. We'll go into interrogation interviews. We'll go into garrity. The officers have garrity rights and what rights they have and what rights they don't have. And we'll give you all the information you need. And we'll probably redact some names for protection, but because we want your views on what we're doing and how we're doing it. So that's, Madam Chairman, that's what I wanted to talk about. And I'll be happy to respond to any questions that you all have.
Thank you, Sheriff. And so you know our new task force, we already have copies that you provided to us of your use of force. Thank you. And we also have those, the link to the police use of force that we plan to look over and review, as well as the review of the internal investigative review panel. So yes, we're happy to oblige you in any way we can. Does anybody have any questions?
We do have a hand raised by Commissioner Rivera. Commissioner Rivera, your mic is now open.
Thank you so much. Sheriff, I want to thank you personally for being forward-thinking, not being reactive, but being proactive in the way that you approach your job with your department. And you have just made things so much easier for us. A lot of communities across the country are requesting from their officials what you have just asked us to participate in. So I wanted to thank you again for that proactive posture that you always take.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner Rivera. Please remember to put your hand down, your virtual hand down.
Anyone else have remarks or questions? I see
a hand, virtual hand up from Commissioner Stanley. Commissioner Stanley, your mic is now open.
Yeah, this is Teresa Stanley, and I just had just one clarifying question. I too really applaud Sheriff Stolley for the proactive move, and I'm assuming that our racial tension task force, and so I guess the chair could answer this, will these kinds of activities fall under that so that we show our interest? And some of the things that we're already doing, are those going to be restructured under there? For instance, like community police or relations, table work, that kind of thing. Is that going to be unpacked so that we figure out how we become engaged?
Well, Teresa, I think Tony is better to answer that question, because I think most of the community police and things of that nature under the police department. I kind of saw this as something separate that, maybe 4 or 5 of you would like to get together and we'd educate you, or we can do the whole committee if you want to. And we've had you all here before, and I think it's been a great asset to have you here. And I think that this would be a great asset too to have your input. And so, Tony may want to comment on the racial tensions that we have, but I think that I'm looking at this more. I couldn't tell you the use of forces that we had right now, whether we don't look at race over here at all. And so I think that that's something that you can look at. Or we can keep stats on if you want us to have stats on that. But I think that, the main thing I want to do is get a feel from you, ease the citizens' minds by having you review what we do, so we're not the only people that are commenting about what we do and how we do it. I think we'll have some outside people looking at that.
Okay.
Does that answer your question, Teresa?
It does. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Commissioner Stanley.
Commissioner
Amberman, you had a question or statement?
Thank you. I, like my colleagues, I wanted to thank Sheriff Stolley for his proactive move that actually exemplifies why Virginia Beach is really amongst the best cities in the Commonwealth in regards to human rights and also our law enforcement relationship with the community. They're always striving for that. And I appreciate the fact that that is going to be a relationship that is going to be moved forward. And I'm hoping that actually we amplify the conversation, because this is a great opportunity to also not look only at issues of violence, but for us to be directly communicating with his department about perhaps other issues that arise in the community. Thank you.
Beatrice.
Thank you, Commissioner Amberman. Were there any other questions or statements from the commission?
I see none. Thank you, Sheriff Strawley, and we'll be in touch with you.
Madam Chair, if we can get in touch here in the near future so we can start decide what size group you want to have do this and start the education process, I'd appreciate that.
Yes, sir. We absolutely will.
All right, thank you.
Thank you very much. And we're going to move on. We have with us also the Assistant Attorney General, Mona Siddiqui. Did I get that right?
Assistant Attorney General, your microphone is now on. Oh. Assistant Attorney General?
Yeah, are you able to hear me now?
We can hear you now.
Welcome.
Right, thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much for your welcome. And I appreciate the opportunity to be here and to just share a few remarks about our work. So I'm Mona Siddiqui, and I work in the Human Rights Division, the Human Rights Fair Housing Division. And I've been there for about 2.5, maybe almost 3 years in this particular department. And we do a lot of the similar types of work that you do, but from the state perspective. Now, many years ago, maybe 10 or so years ago, we also used to be a state council, similar to this, with commissioners and the staff. And under McDonald's administration, we merged into the Attorney General's office, and we enforced the Virginia Human Rights Act, which, as you may know, has been expanded greatly this year. And so one of the initiatives that Attorney General Mark Herring had in regard to expanding our work in the division is to start to better understand the landscape throughout the Commonwealth regarding human rights work in our local commissions. So this year, I've taken upon myself to visit each commission and attend 1 or 2 of their meetings to sort of introduce myself, let you know that we are here as a resource for you, and would like to maybe better understand the work that you are doing. What I'm understanding throughout this tour is that each commission functions very uniquely depending on the local ordinances, and so it's been great to see the size and getting to know the work that you all are doing. Is basically what I'm here for, to get to know you and let you know what we do. And so, as I said, we enforce the Virginia Human Rights Act, similar to what you do as well. And so we receive and we investigate unlawful discrimination that violates not only the state act, but also federal civil rights law. And so that includes discrimination in the areas of employment, public accommodation, and also educational institutions. And then in addition to taking complaints, we're also authorized to inquire into incidents that we think may constitute unlawful acts of discrimination, and investigate those on our own accord, and then seek enforcement on if we find that reasonable cause that discrimination occurred. And a new authority that we have gotten this year is that when the Attorney General has reasonable cause to believe that any person or group of persons has engaged in pattern or practice of resistance or violation of the Virginia Human Rights Act, this is sort of the pattern and practice that we hear about, then the Attorney General may commence a civil action to seek appropriate relief. And that was not there before, and that's a new area. So we're growing in a lot of different ways. And part of that growth is to interface with our local human rights commissions. When I started, we had 1 attorney, I was the 2nd attorney, and we had 2 investigators. and we are slowly increasing our capacity to 3 investigators and 3 attorneys and 5 investigators. So part of that work now includes working with our commissions as well. And so I'm just here to get to know you and for you to get to know what we do and hopefully build from there. So I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have for me.
Yes, thank you, Attorney General, Assistant Attorney General. Your department, I remember the State Council on Human Rights, and you have taken over most all of those duties or all of the duties. Is that correct?
Yes, we have. Our duties were not as expansive as the councils were. They were sort of codified in Section 2.2-520. It sort of lays out what we're authorized to do, and that was sort of what I briefly explained, which is receiving and investigating complaints. We can also commission studies, assign task force, things like that. In addition to investigating pattern and practice of discrimination in these variety of areas, employment, public accommodation. So we're sort of expanding that authority now, given the Virginia Values Act and the way that has expanded the Virginia Human Rights Act itself. So it's very similar to the Human Rights Council work, but it's codified specifically in statute.
Thank you very much. Does anyone, I see hands up.
Vice Chair Gencott, you had a question or comment?
Yes, this is Ginger Gencott, Vice Chair. Hi, Mona. So nice to meet you. Glad that you're there. I do have 2 questions for you. The first question is, what is the conversation relating to the increase in anti-Asian racism, hate incidents, or hate crimes in the department?
I really appreciate that question. We are very cognizant of what has been going on. We have been working, our division has been working with the Virginia Asian Advisory Board, which is the eyes and the ears for the governor in regard to hearing from Asian American AAPI communities throughout the Commonwealth on what is being experienced. And we collaborated with the Asian Advisory Board to provide resources regarding how to report incidences of hate. Sometimes those incidents fall in discrimination, sometimes they fall as a hate crime, and sometimes they fall in between. And so we provided those resources as to, depending on the incident that occurs, where the proper reporting should be. Because often a layperson, I mean, if I was an attorney, I wouldn't know if this happened to me, does it qualify as unlawful discrimination? You know, of course, as we all know, it needs to be in employment and public accommodation. There's certain things. So we have created a resource sheet in collaboration with the Asian Advisory Board for them to pass along to the communities throughout Virginia regarding what relief they can seek and how they can seek relief if they have experienced incidents of hate based on their national heritage or national origin. So that is some of the work we're doing, and we're also attending trainings to see what's going on in different parts of the country and how we can be a stronger force in addressing some of this and looking out in our intake for these specific issues, because we understand that they are rising. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thank you so much. My second question is, as you mentioned, with the July 1st edition of the LGBTQ community to the protected classes in the Civil Rights Act, are there plans to provide guidance to localities to update training and consistency in reporting? When I looked at our website for the state, I was only able to find data online for 2018.
So reporting data in the types of cases that we're taking on this new protected category, what will it be like? So every year, the Attorney General publishes our annual report. So you should be able to access, I think the most recent, this year's report has not been issued, but you should be able to access data for 2019 through the annual report. And I could send it to Dominique so that you would have access to that information. And there's a section on the Division of Human Rights that gives more detail on those reporting, sort of what has been reported, the types of areas that we're seeing discrimination complaints.
That would be great.
Yeah, I will send that along. And also, this is a little bit different, but there's also a new legislation in the General Assembly that requires our Division of Human Rights to start thinking about enforcing equal pay and how we can better, as a state, throughout the state, how employers can better collect data related to sex and race, to in the effort to kind of address wage disparities on the basis of sex or race, and provide recommendations on what the General Assembly can do to try to address those issues in Virginia. So that has sort of a data component, and so we'll be looking at specific data on that. And so in the 2020 report, we will probably have additional data in that particular area.
Okay, and one part of my question we haven't touched on yet, because it seems like the localities have, they've had kind of their own license as to how to categorize the hate crimes when it comes to the LGBT community. Is the department thinking about providing any additional guidelines so that we get some better data for the LGBT community?
Guidelines on collecting data for the LGBT community in regard to discrimination complaints?
Yes, crimes against LGBTQ individuals.
In the criminal aspect, yeah. So
yes.
So yeah. So I don't have the answer to that because we are specifically civil rights. So when you start talking about hate crimes, we start moving into criminal justice, and their data collection is, and that's part of government and bureaucracy, and you know how that is all set up. So we would collect data and address complaints related to civil violations of the statute, the Virginia Human Rights Act or the Civil Rights Act, or related to the LGBTQ community, and that will be reflected in our annual report. It's now law enforcement is very different because a lot of it is at the local level, and that data collection is done at the local level, and I'm not aware of any sort of clearinghouse that collects that data throughout the Commonwealth. But that is an area of interest, and it is something that we're looking at. And what I would like to do is take your question and inquiry back to our office and share that with our folks to see how we can cover the spectrum of collecting data, not only on the civil side, but criminal side, because often those lines are not that clear. Yeah, right. So thank you for your question.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. I couldn't hear you, but I guess I'm on. Thank you very much, Ms. Siddiqui. I'm Beatrice Amberman. I am, besides being the member of the Virginia Human Rights Commission, I'm also the chair of the Virginia Coalition of Latino Organizations. And in that capacity, have been invited to participate in what I know is a new group forming around the state of Virginia regarding it's a law enforcement task force that is going to be basically studying the issue in community colleges where law enforcement get training. I wanted to know if your department is going to have representation in that task force. And then as my colleague here, I also have additional questions. If you don't mind explaining to us, first of all, it's very good to know that you are going to be having a more direct relationship with human rights commissions across the Commonwealth. But do you mind telling us what is the process in which a commission can present a complaint into your office? And secondly, can you explain the composition of your office in regards to, you said that you have investigators and attorneys. Do you have any community individuals representing, the people at large in the state? Thank you.
Sure. So I guess the Office of the Attorney General, in general, like the office itself, represents state agencies. That's the majority of the work that we do. Every state agency that's out there is represented by somebody from our office through their assistant attorney generals. There's that piece of it. Even our Virginia Asian Advisory Board, as well as our Latino Advisory Board, that is the governor, we represent each of those boards and commissions and agencies from that respect. Now, that's probably 80 to 90% of our work. Now, we have a small area of work that provides support to consumers. So we have a consumer protection section that provides resources and addresses complaints that consumers may have against, businesses, agencies, fraud, that type of a thing. And that works for the public, and there's attorneys and investigators within that section. And then we also, as our division, I explained to you, we deal with specific areas of discrimination in the public. And so we don't have like a council or a commission that represents the different constituents, but we have a constituent services person who answers complaints or intakes and then refers them to the appropriate entity to help address their concerns, constituent concerns in that way. We also have Medicaid fraud units, so that we investigate folks who have been victims of Medicaid fraud as well, elder abuse, and victims in the criminal justice system. So we have certain parts of our AG's office that support the community, but it's all made up of attorneys and investigators and support to provide services to agencies and communities. So we don't have constituent representation like a board would. I mean, and that's just structurally. Does that help clarify? Because we're also a state agency.
I also I wanted to ask you, a follow-up. What is the relationship between your department and the Office of the Equity and that is being held by
Dr. Underwood.
Dr. Underwood, yeah. Because I know that she, and the reason I'm asking is because there have been discussions for several months between her and diverse communities. Actually, I was a previous board member of the Virginia Latino Advisory Board. So, we have had communication. And I know that she has received complaints from those communities. So I am just wondering, what is the relationship between departments so that the communication is shared and the concerns addressed. Thank you.
Right. Yes. And yes, I'm familiar with Dr. Underwood, and we are also in the process of, it's a fairly new position, and it was recently codified as a permanent part of the governor's cabinet. And so we are working on building our relationship with that office as well. That's also a newer process. And I do understand that if she does see individual complaints of discrimination specifically that fall within our purview, that she would be referring those complaints, depending on where they come from, to you all or to local commissions or to the state, to us, if it doesn't fall within the jurisdiction of the local commission. But that is also the way we're developing our relationships with the local commissions. We're also working to establish a good rapport with that office as well. And we do represent them, like our office is their counsel as well. So.
Thank you. We're trying to limit our comments to and questions to 3 minutes. Luis, did you have a question?
Commissioner Rivera, your microphone is now open.
Okay, thank you so much for the opportunity to hear from you, Mona. And I have a question. Many times we have people in the Hispanic community that approach us and want to know if there's any opportunity for restitution in cases where they have worked for a week, a month, whatever, because they're not in the country with their documents. The employer will use that against them and threaten them and say that they'll report them to ICE or whomever if they continue requesting the money. And so these poor people walk away without any kind of compensation. You mentioned that your office is involved in enforcing equal pay. I'm wondering if that falls within that realm.
Yeah, that would. So you're talking about cases of employment discrimination when it comes to migrant workers, the seasonal migrant workers. Is that the specific category you're referring to?
Well, I don't know if it's discrimination. I think it's outright fraud in the sense that they're refusing to pay people for the work that they've done only because they may be considered undocumented or whatever.
I see. So, so the category you're talking about is somebody who resides or who is in this country and is working for an employer, may not have the documentation for, for immigration documentation, and for that reason, employers are taking advantage of them, getting work done from them, and not compensating them.
Exactly.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean that to me, thinking of that specific scenario, that would fall within our purview, because they're for us, we have nothing to do with whether what their immigration status is. If they're employed and their employer discriminates against them on the basis of their national origin, is what it sort of seems like to me here. Because they're treating them like differently, disparate treatment, right, based on your national origin. To me, that would fall in our purview. Now, I will say that in my tenure there, and from what I know, we haven't had a case like that, because I think that a lot of folks in that situation don't know where to go to redress that. There may also be language barriers as well. And that's an area. I do know that there are nonprofit organizations like Legal Aid Justice Centers that provides a lot of advocacy services to migrant communities or folks like that. But for the most part, we are there as a resource. But I don't know that, I think that is a problem. Access is probably a problem as well. But it's certainly an issue, and it's interesting that we haven't come across it. Has the Virginia Beach office come across complaints like that?
Well, as individuals, I'm sure my colleague Beatrice Ammerman has been approached, like I have been approached, and it's again understanding what the resources are, and understanding too if you even have a Spanish language person employed by your office or a resource of that nature.
Yes. So we have our all our information is also available in Spanish, and up until a few months ago, we had a Spanish-speaking investigator, and so so currently we do not, but we're in the process of recruiting more investigators, and one of the top things in our criteria is dual language or Spanish speaking. That is a priority of our division, to recruit investigators who are fluent in Spanish.
Thank you. We have one last question from Ginger, and Madam Attorney General, it sounds like we can have an entire meeting about this. So maybe we'll be in touch with you.
Yes.
I just have a
love the
statement.
enthusiasm.
I just have a statement I'd like to share, and I just, for all of us, I just want to make sure that we are keeping discrimination against those with mental illness on our dashboard and having an awareness of that. I think we'd be remiss if we didn't also share with you that we have concerns about how our persons with mental illness are treated. That's all I had to say.
Okay. Thank you. And
Excuse me, Chair Neri Strickland. I want to take a moment to recognize that Commissioner Khaled has joined on the audio.
good. And you have Jojo. Do you have him also?
Correct. Commissioner Khaled, can you hear us?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Great. Okay. And
Okay, I've been on for a good like 40 minutes, just
yeah,
FYI.
we've been going back and forth trying to get you on. I'm sorry about that.
That's okay.
Commissioner Orencio, are you with us?
Present.
Okay, great. Yes, okay. I'm glad I could get you guys on. At least we can hear you. All right. So I'll return the mic to Chair Neri Strickland on that.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Attorney General. And yes, we would be happy to get back with you again. And I think we could probably have at least a portion of one of our meetings dedicated to this important dialogue. So thank you very much for coming.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for allowing me to speak.
Yes, thank you. And moving along, everyone should have gotten our minutes in the package and had a chance to review them. Can we get those approved for February?
Yes, ma'am. I move that we approve the minutes as presented.
Second, anyone? Louis, is that second?
Commissioner Hazeltine? Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I'm not sure who seconded it, but I guess it is.
Who seconded? Commissioner Rivera.
Okay. Do we need to do roll call on this, or can we?
We have to do.
Okay.
We're gonna do a roll call vote. So once again, I'm gonna go down the line, and each commissioner just tell me yay or nay, or if you approve the February 13th minutes. So starting with Commissioner Amberman.
yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Hazeltine.
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Knight Thompson.
Yes.
Thank you. Vice Chair Jenka.
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Gunn.
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Burnsworth.
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Rivera.
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Stevens.
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Zilberman.
Yes.
Thank you. And Chair Neri Strickland.
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Stanley.
I had my hand up for one correction.
Okay.
Correction, because I thought before we went to the second vote, on the last paragraph thing under item of reports, just one correction to the minutes, one word. It in the line that says Commissioner Rivera was selected as an unbiased observer of the incident. I understood our chair to state that Commissioner Rivera was selected as a second or another observer. Not unbiased, because I like to think the only bias that each of us has is from the perspective of human rights. So if we could just take the unbiased out and put as a second or another observer, then I can approve the minutes.
Okay. Commissioner Neri Strickland.
Wait a minute, Ron, I can't hear you, Ron. Rod.
Rod, can you unmute yourself, Rod?
All right,
Okay.
all right. I apologize. I know this is tedious, but this is being recorded, so we want to do it right. What we now have is a substitute motion from Teresa. The person who made the original motion, would you accept Teresa's substitute as a friendly amendment?
Commissioner Ammerman, your microphone is now open.
Yes, sir.
Okay, and Commissioner Rivera, you're still seconding?
Commissioner Rivera, your microphone is now open.
Yes, sir.
Okay, Dominique, start at the beginning.
Okay. Commissioner Amberman.
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Hazeltine.
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Knight Thompson.
Yes.
Thank you. Vice Chair Gencott.
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Gunn.
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Burnsworth.
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Rivera.
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Stevens.
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Zilberman.
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Chair Neer Strickland.
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Stanley.
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Cubine.
Yes.
Thank you. And hold on one moment. Commissioner Callett.
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Orencia.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. One second. Excuse me one moment.
Yes.
Okay.
Now, was it
By a
4
vote,
o'clock?
by a vote of
Bring it on.
14, the minutes with the one correction for February
Let me
13th are
tell-
approved.
Let me tell Dominique.
Thank you. Commission Chair Neer Strickland.
Okay, I'm sorry, that was approved. Minutes are approved, and that was Ron Taylor who says he can't get to you. Can you try and get to him, Dominique?
I sure will.
Okay, thank you.
You're
And
welcome.
in the meantime, we have Jojo Orencio, who is, we're a month late with election of officers. And Ginger and I put in our nominations. I didn't hear any other nominations put forward, but Jojo, can you guide us through that, please?
Yes, absolutely. Can everybody hear me? The nominating committee met in June. It was myself and Rabbi Zilberman, so we were able to discuss this over the phone. Having only had the two nominations that came through for chair and vice chair, and Dr. Gencott for vice chair, and Sylvia Neer Strickland for chair, we just decided to forward those names to the body. We are still taking nominations, as I put in prior emails, for any floor nominations, but at this point, the nominating committee is nominating those two for those two positions.
I see Joe has raised his virtual hand.
Commissioner Burnsworth, your mic is now on.
I move that we close nominations and accept those put forward by the committee.
Okay, and let's see. Commissioner Rivera? Commissioner Rivera, your mic is now open. Commissioner Rivera, your mic is now open. Can you unmute yourself? Commissioner Rivera? Commissioner Rivera? Commissioner Rivera, can you hear us? Okay, we can't hear you, Commissioner Rivera. Can you unmute yourself? No. Okay, Commissioner Amberman?
Yes, I second the motion. Thank you.
Okay.
And I will just slightly rephrase the motion. This is a motion to elect the slate of officers as recommended by the committee. And if there's no discussion, Dominique can begin the roll call.
Okay. Commissioner Amberman?
Yes.
Commissioner Hazeltine?
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Knight Thompson?
Yes.
Thank you. Vice Chair Jenkott?
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Gunn?
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Burnsworth?
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Rivera, and I think we're having some technical difficulties with Commissioner Rivera. I see a error symbol on his video. Commissioner Rivera? Okay, hopefully he'll get back online when we come back around. Commissioner Stevens?
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Zoberman?
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Stanley?
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Cuban?
Yes.
Okay. Commissioner Callett?
Yes.
Thank you. And Commissioner Rencia?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Let's see if we can try to get Commissioner Rivera back.
It appears to me that he's no longer online. He may be trying to call in, but you have enough votes that the motion has carried. And if we're able to hear from Louis later, we can ask him, hey, did you vote in favor of the slate of officers?
Okay, all right. So in that case, we have a,
I don't think I voted.
I'm sorry, Chair Neer Strickland?
Yes.
Okay. So in that case, we have 12 votes yes for the motion for a slate of officers.
Was there anyone else who wasn't called? Because we had 14 on the last one. Well, you know what? I'm not going to hold things up. 12 is enough to elect.
We actually have 13,
Okay.
Commissioner Burnsworth. So 13, so we're just missing Commissioner Rivera.
And we'll try to get him later. Congratulations, Sylvia and Ginger. Thank you for your willingness to serve. You both, I administered the oath to both of you last year. To the best of my knowledge, neither of you have revoked your oaths. Congratulations on your reelection and thank you for your service.
Thank you. And thank you, everybody, for your support, your guidance, your counsel throughout the year. It's been challenging, but thank you guys very much. Thank you. And now,
one moment,
have,
Chair Neer Strickland. Commissioner Amberman, did you have a statement or question? Oh, okay. You just forgot.
Your virtual hand is
up.
Your
hand is up. Okay, and I just want to take a moment to acknowledge the fact that Commissioner Taylor is with us. Commissioner Taylor?
Hello?
Hello, Commissioner Taylor.
How you doing?
Welcome, welcome. Okay, thank you. I'm gonna keep you muted just so there's no echoing or anything like that. But thank you and welcome. Okay, and the mic is back to you, Chair Neer Strickland.
Yes, thank you. We have had Chief Sakaro on deck since October. We were going to do recruitment, but in light of current events and in light that we have now a task force on racial tension, I viewed his presentation to City Council the other night, and he has agreed to give us a very abbreviated portion of that, because there's a lot of information I think that we need to hear. And if that's agreeable with everyone, I even said he may take a few more minutes than 15. Is that all right with everyone? Shaking heads. Yes,
Okay.
sir. Well, welcome, Chief Sakara. Thank you. I'm sorry, Zakara. You guys,
Chief Sakara, your microphone is now open.
Okay, thank you, and congratulations to the newly installed and elected positions. It's my pleasure to be here today. What I'd like to try and do is replicate the council presentation that I shared before council on Tuesday afternoon. I've cut out some slides, but it's still fairly lengthy, so I'll breeze through it as best I can. So I'm going to try and share the PowerPoint with you. Are you seeing that?
Yeah.
No.
So I think, Dominique, I think you may have to share it on your side.
Yes, yes. Can you send it to me?
Can you share the screen? Are you
Yeah.
able to do that?
Yes, but once you email me the presentation, I can share the screen.
Actually, you can give him control.
Okay. I can give him.
So take your dive.
Yeah, I think somebody's helping her now.
And to him. Where is he? Yeah, so take that and drag it and drop it. Yes.
Okay, you should be able to have the control now.
So you guys seeing that now?
We're seeing it.
yes.
All right, well, very good. Let's get started. So we titled this presentation Striving for Police Excellence, and I wanted to start with a picture of the 2nd Police Precinct in the resort area. This sign was brought to us by some citizens, and I just wanted to highlight that this displays that we're getting a lot of overall community support. So just a little bit backdrop on the department. We're a department of just over 1,000 members of sworn and civilian folks. We're the largest municipal department in the city, in the state, and we have a budget of just over $100 million. On the screen, you see our demographics in the department. When you add up the diversity, it totals to about 17%. The City of Virginia Beach demographics for African American are about 20%. I thought it was important to share our citizen satisfaction survey. This is a survey that's done by an external vendor to the city. They do a scientific survey, and last year in 2019, we scored a 91% in overall citizen satisfaction and 88% among African Americans, which is actually, 1% down from 2017 of 92%. Violent crime is a topical issue. On the screen, you see the violent crime for some other cities that are like sizes. As you know, for the last about 15 years, Virginia Beach has been considered the safest city of 350,000 or more. I'd like to bring your attention to Charlotte, North Carolina. While their population is almost twice as much as Virginia Beach, you can see that the aggravated assaults are quite more than twice as much than what we have. I also like you to reflect on the city of Buffalo. They have just over 255 year-round residents, and you can see the aggravated assaults they have. We say our city has a population of just under 400,000, but according to Visitor and Conventions Bureau, we have about 19 million tourists. Councilman Tower suggested I revisit that number, but I'm using that number based on CVB's information. One of the things that we've talked about previously is our recruiting challenges, and as the chairperson has said, we were planning to talk about our recruiting challenges today, but I included it in the overview of the department. Our challenge includes bringing qualified persons to the table to get them through the academy. Entry into the police academy does not guarantee success. We like to think that the job's difficult to attain and fairly easy to lose based on our workforce accountability. We still have a challenge as in our diversity numbers and recruiting, but we're experiencing decreased numbers in all qualified candidates. And this is not unique to Virginia Beach. And of course, the current public health crisis is challenging our recruiting efforts. So what are we doing about it? We recently formed a police citizen recruiting consortium or task force, and we invited about 35 civic-minded citizens from the faith-based community, the civic community, the corporate business community, as well as the academic community to look at opportunities to locate and recruit quality employees. We've been working to develop a police cadet program proposal. I'm pleased to say that program proposal has now been cycled through the Human Resources Department as well as the city manager's office, and we're looking to review that and start as soon as we can. We traditionally engage historically Black colleges and universities for support. We participated in many social justice programs and forums, and we've partnered with the LGBTQ Life Center. So starting here next week, we're starting our Class 69 Police Academy with 51 recruits. We've implemented a professional development program with the support of Human Resources and City Council. That helps us not only on the retention of our members, but also recruiting personnel to the department. We always look for certified police officers, and should we identify any certified police officers, we bring them through an abbreviated police academy so we can indoctrinate them into our culture, and we maintain a world-class training reputation and environment. We're committed to the community. We have a very robust department accountability program. You've heard me spoke previously about being a learning organization and a leaning forward organization, and we are engaged in the conversation. We do a lot of community outreach, and we do a lot of trust building activities. So department accountability, we belong to the commission, the International Commission of Accreditation for Law Enforcement. It's called CALEA for short. In the country, there's almost 18,000 municipal police departments. As seen on the slide, we're one of 731 departments that are certified nationally. But more importantly, we're one of 138 that are certified as a gold standard department. They now call it the accreditation with excellence, and that equates to less than 5% of departments that are accredited have a gold standard, and less than 1% have attained the actual gold standard. So we didn't just attain the gold standard. For our last 4 certification processes, the assessors came and they not only checked our policies, procedures, and our written compliance standards, they also went into the field and interviewed staff members and quizzed them, if you will. We held a public meeting and public forum, and some of the information from the public forum is before you. They gave us credit for community policing at its best. Every employee understands and practices the philosophy. We're meticulous in seeking feedback. So what I wanted to talk about is the high volume of community engagement that we have, and I'm going to speak to that in just a moment about the volume of numbers. One of the topical issues in the national conversation is the use of force. You heard me speak before that all our policies and field guides are on the web. They're lifted in their entirety. The only information that's redacted is tactical or law enforcement sensitive information. I would encourage you to navigate the website, and I think you'll be pleased that probably better than 95% of the policies are in their totality posted. We have some of the more stringent use of force protocols and guidelines, and I've been with the department now, I'm entering my 42nd year. We have never, ever allowed chokeholds or neck restraints that restrict the airflow. We have mandatory reporting on use of force. We have a multi-layered process where the officer's command has to review that and approve it. And should there be a use of force that's found out of policy, it automatically prompts a internal affairs investigation. So I wanted to share a closer look in accountability. The bottom line, the total numbers that you're seeing reflect formal documented encounters by our police officers, almost 260,000. What that number of formal documented encounters does not include, it does not include when we're at the Pungo Strawberry Festival. It doesn't include when we're at the Neptune Festival or July 4th, or when we're on foot patrol in town center and our officers are engaging citizens in just general conversation, helping them with directions. It also doesn't reflect on the number of persons in a transaction. So those numbers reflect one transaction per incident. So if an officer goes to a traffic crash or a call for service with a disturbance and there's one person or 101 persons there, we're documenting that as one transaction. So in those transactions, you can see that officers in the Virginia Beach Police Department used force at 0.3%. Out of all those citizen transactions, we received complaints at the 0.03% level, and then citizens' complaints on use of force is 0.004. In actuality, we have documented incidents of significant injury, and we have to report that we only have 2/1000ths of 1% of significant injuries reported. And remember, this is last year, and as you know, we had at least one officer involved shooting at the Municipal Center on last year, May 31st. So we're a learning and leaning forward organization. We feel like we're ahead of the curve. We have an active bystander training where the officers are guided by not only policy, but training. It's reinforced in training that they must intervene in any rule violation. And what you saw in Minneapolis and the tragedy of George Floyd, our officers would have been directed by policy and training, and that's reinforced in our daily workforce accountability to intervene in that terrible, terrible incident. We have a very robust tracking mechanism for our use of force. It's called Blue Team. The Blue Team system also has an early intervention alert. That's the EI that you see on your screen, and that sets thresholds for the officers. And once an officer meets those certain thresholds, and the thresholds include a volume of arrests, a volume of complaints, assortment of filters. Once that officer meets that threshold, the command has to review all the circumstances prompting that threshold and have an analysis with the involved officer and the chain of command. We have required de-escalation in our use of force and in our training. We're ahead of the curve technology-wise. We have a citywide enterprise camera system. We've spoken to the HRC before about our body-worn camera program. We're currently in phase 3 of 4 with about 330 officers fully equipped with the body-worn camera. And we believe we have some of the best world-class training available. In fact, your police department trains twice as much as what the Department of Criminal Justice Service mandates. We've had a crisis intervention team since 2009. Right now, we have over 400 fully certified CIT officers, and the CIT certification comes only after a 40-hour training that includes both academic training as well as role-playing and scenario-based training. We partner with human services and our own staff to build that training. The other thing I want to talk about is our expanded CIT program, where we've got a human services clinician literally in the vehicle with the police officer working side by side as a mobile co-response team. That enables us to bring the clinician to the scene. It gives us the ability for the clinician to observe what's happening and be on the early phases of trying to find a diversion resource for that individual. What does this mean as far as calls for service? Last year, we had about 3,300 CIT calls for service, and the average time for our officers handling the CIT type call for service is 2.5 hours. Wanted to talk about community outreach and trust. We're committed to engaging our community. Our officers reflect the virtues of policing. We strongly encourage our officers have a guardian mindset. And as Sir Robert Peel has stated in his writings, the police are the public and the public are the police. We take that to heart, and we engage in various community initiatives that help keep the overall crime rate in Virginia Beach where it is. Some of these initiatives include the art walk behind the 4th Police Precinct. That was spearheaded by Deputy Chief Gallagher. He worked very closely with the schools and the student body at the schools. Here's a picture of our officers partnering with the CTAC community at a community day. Here's a picture of an officer on a horse on a mounted unit. This was taken during one of our community engagements, one of our actual surveys, door to door in the Atlantis apartment complex. Here's one of our officers engaged in a reading program at a local elementary school. And here's yet another officer doing a tour with a local Boy Scout troop. I mentioned the community survey with the photograph of the mounted unit at the Atlantis apartments. We've been doing them for a number of years, but since 2010, as a result of the Mayor's Action Challenge, we formalized our survey outreach a little bit more and created a survey instrument. It's not a scientific survey. The purpose of our surveys is to go out in the select communities, go door to door, and solicit feedback that is real, it's tangible, and it works. All members of the department, from the chief of police to the recruits, participate in these positive face-to-face conversations. So we've had long-standing relationships in the community. Since the early 90s, we've had citizens engaged in a citizen advisory committee. We have an advisory board that's compiled by citizens, officers in the precinct, a liaison with their respective civic leagues. We are actively engaged in the roundtable discussion in Western Bayside. We've been actively engaged for a number of years with the Resort Advisory Committee, public schools, and of course, you've seen a police liaison with the HRC for a number of years. Current topics of interest include our use of force and our policy. After the Minneapolis incident, we received numerous inquiries about an 8 can't wait webpage that speaks about 8 qualifiers on the use of force policies. And that particular website had us scored as 5 of the 8. So what we did is we made arrangements to go through our use of force general order. We inserted these categories into our existing general order and highlighted it and then posted it on our Facebook page so everyone in the community can see that we've had these policies for a number of years, and that's not something that we just adopted because of the George Floyd incident. Another topical conversation is citizen review, citizen oversight. Since about 1991, the city of Virginia Beach is one of the only few in the region that has a citizen oversight. It's called the Investigation Review Panel. There are different structures of the Investigation Review Panel and different citizen oversight options. This current option allows citizens to seek an audience with this body of civilians who seek to be appointed by council, who are able to review the entirety of the police investigation. They have an opportunity to tell their story before this panel, and the police department has opportunity to report out on the findings. We've had a couple of circumstances where the IRP has asked for additional investigation. We've completed the additional investigation and reported back to the IRP. On one particular case, there was another case that I recall where the IRP wanted our animal shelter to improve our intake and release protocols, and we adopted the recommendations from the IRP. Other policy considerations is the mandatory reporting of use of force to a national database. The Virginia Beach Police Department has done that since the FBI initiated that activity. We report to the Virginia State Portal, who then transmits that information to the FBI. There's been a lot of conversation about defunding police budgets, and without getting into a conversation about demantalizing or dismembering or dissembling the police department, I would like to say we're already ahead of the curve on some of the defunding police budget conversation, and the fact that we partner with Human Services on our CIT program, our mobile code response. We previously partnered with Human Services and Housing and Neighborhood Preservation on a program we call the Pinkies, where we did outreach on a peer-to-peer basis to homeless folks in the resort. The question of publishing use of force reports has been lately spoke about. As you know, as a result of community conversation, the police department posts the aggregate information from the Office of Internal Affairs on the webpage. And I just recently released our annual report on use of force with a redacted version that's posted on the webpage. We're sensitive and actively engaged in recruiting a more diverse workforce, but I'm looking at quality workforce, and diversifying that workforce is an added bonus. And then we are already ahead of the curve on the use of body-worn cameras as a mandate. As many of you know, we solicited community input on the development of that general order. The general order adopted, I believe, almost every community suggestion that's embedded in that general order. And again, that's one of the general orders that are posted. And for clarity, our body-worn cameras are to be activated on calls for service and when our officers are in their official capacity. And there are only 2 persons on the entire department that can edit or alter a body-worn camera video, and I am not even one of those persons. So it's a pretty stringent protocol to work through. Our community dialogue continues. We're meeting with various community organizers. We've hosted various in-person town hall meetings when possible, virtual town hall meetings. We've met and worked with many demonstrations since May 31st. The police department has handled about 55 different public demonstrations ranging from single digits to between 2,500 to 3,000 people. All of them have been peaceful except the resort May 31st demonstration. So we're a learning organization. We welcome communication. We often self-reflect to improve our process, and we're not resistant to engage in thought-provoking conversations. So I apologize if that was too abbreviated of a share of detail, but I wanted to hit the highlights on what we spoke about at the council meeting, and I'm happy to visit next month and present the broader and more in-depth report on the recruiting and the retention challenges. So I'm happy to answer any questions or try to answer any questions.
Yes, thank you, Chief. Is that sounding?
Oh, we got some. Hold on 1 second. Okay. All right. So yes, we have. Looks like Commissioner Rivera, you have a question or comment?
Yes, thank you, Chief, for your comments. And I personally am very proud to be able to live in a city that is considered a safe city. Thank you for your efforts. But I have certain concerns also. And I'm not sure if you're prepared at this time to answer them, but there are three areas that I always wonder about in terms of where the police officers come from, et cetera, and what they go through. I was wondering, is there a psychological assessment that is done of recruits? And if so, do you think that it's broad enough to be able to weed out any potential issues that comes between racial relations? Secondly, in your training of those recruits in the academy and beyond, do you have minority trainers in the academy that are sufficient to be able to provide a different point of view in terms or a different approach to that training? And also, do you have any facilitators of cultural awareness that could help those new recruits to become more culturally aware of the population that they're going to be serving? Those are the three areas that I have questions about.
All right. Well, thank you for the questions, Mr. Rivera. So let me try to speak with them in the order that you shared them with. So the police department does have a very competitive hiring process. It includes not only the formal application, which is very lengthy, and it's almost a life history, if you will. Once we get that history, we assign background investigators to follow up on that candidate, to include talking to the family members, talking to professional references, employers, neighbors. In those questions, we try to determine if the candidate has any bias that surfaces. We all have bias. The question is if we can identify an open and overt bias as part of the selection process. They have to pass a polygraph examination. They have to pass a medical screening. They have to pass a physical screening, and they also have to pass a psychological screening. So all those processes are in place. They've been in place for a number of years. I would say that while the academy is not a gauge to success, because we're seeing about a 30% attrition rate in the academy. During the academy, we cover inclusive and diversity training. We cover communications. We cover, problem solving. So all those areas are in fact different academic evolutions in the training. We have a number of minority officers of color as well as gender that are actively participate. The Academy first line supervisors is a minority person. Our recruiting officer is a minority person right now. And we have the different instructors that come that are diverse throughout the department. But those issues are talked about and discussed. We did implicit bias training, not only internal, but some members of the HRC were actually invited when we hosted some of that implicit bias training. So we do our best to make getting hired difficult, and we do our best in workforce accountability to make sure that if we have a problem employee, I'm going to do my best to make sure they're a former employee. So I hope that answered the three questions, Mr. Rivera.
Yeah, I'm satisfied. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Commissioner Rivera. Please remember to lower your virtual hand. Thank you. Okay, Commissioner Amberman, you had a statement or question?
Yes, a question. Thank you very much, Chief. You know that we are very of our community, the Latino community, working with the police department. And I can tell you and actually attest to the fact that when we have reunions, one of the times where we have had the police department personnel there, the community, including the undocumented community, reach out and come close to ask questions in regards to, what to do if they get a ticket and so forth. But what I wanted to address is the fact that people in our community have talked about the internal affairs review. Do you mind expanding a little bit more so that we can understand what is the process that, because I feel that I hear voices in the community, and it would be important for us to touch on that subject. You mentioned of several things. And then
So can you clarify the question? I think I heard you want me to explain the administrative investigative process with internal affairs.
Correct. Yes.
Did I hear that correct?
Yes, correct. And then the second portion would be, you said that only two persons are able to alter body cameras footage. What would be the circumstances in which a person can be compelled to alter any videotaping? Thank you.
So that's a good question, and I'll start with the second question. So for example, if an officer inadvertently goes into the restroom and leaves their camera on, I don't think there's any value, right? I don't think there's any value in having us have that on videotape. There may be also some circumstances where something confidential, like a sexual assault victim shared something that we don't want to have that replicated or duplicated. But those are very, very isolated circumstances. And again, there's only two persons. One is the executive officer of the Office of Internal Affairs, and the other one is one of our supervisors in our technology department. So we purposely limited that. And even with those limitations, I'm not aware of any videos to date since we started the program where we've had to delete or edit anything. So to your first question, and just to reframe the question, you asked about the Office of Internal Affairs investigations. So the investigations can be handled at the operational command or at the precinct level or at the Office of Internal Affairs. The Office of Internal Affairs, by policy, is compelled to investigate all excessive use of force and crimes that, violations that reflect a conformance to laws. So the process is the responsible command will do an investigation that includes speaking to the involved citizen, speaking to the involved witnesses, the involved officers, the officers' witnesses, collecting all items of evidentiary value to include a body-worn camera. If it happened in the neighborhood and there's a citizen's videotape or a business tape, we'll look at that. We'll look at the communication information on the call for service. We'll look at everything we can. Once that information is compiled, and by policy, the investigation has up to 45 days to be accomplished. The assigned command will have the opportunity to review that and examine and make an appraisal on if any of the officers' actions were out of policy. If they weren't out of policy, is there any teachable moments? Are there any policy consideration, any equipment consideration? And once all that due diligence is done, that captain then communicates with his deputy chief and his commander. Depending on the rule violation and the nature of the rule violation, we may or may not have to engage with the city attorney's office for legal advice, as well as the Department of Human Resources. Each incident that's investigated is evaluated on its own merit. And once it's evaluated and the findings are determined, it's then up to the command to determine what corrective action needs to be. So sometimes corrective action are teachable moments. Sometimes corrective action is a policy review. Sometimes corrective action on an employee with a spotless record means they have to be separated from the department. It all depends on the rule violation, the nature of the rule violation, and to some degree, the track record of the employee. The police department follows the city's progressive disciplinary process. So for officers that we repeatedly see the same rule violations, that corrective action escalates in a progressive fashion. But again, all circumstances are off the table if the action by the officer is so egregious that we need to separate them. And depending on the nature of the action, we'll do that as fast as the statutory authority allows. Let me just highlight something else about our internal workforce accountability and our intervention system. I recently received an anonymous letter from one of our police officers explaining that another officer was violating some rules on operating vehicles. It wasn't a use of force. It was just an excessive speed circumstance. I immediately got the letter, and again, it was an anonymous letter, and we encouraged that. And I signed it to a supervisor within the Office of Internal Affairs. Within 24 hours, that supervisor was able to log into the technology of the system, and based on the technology in the cars, we saw that this officer was violating our policy on driving and speeds pretty significantly. Within that 24 hours, I made arrangements to remove that officer from active patrol. He's currently sitting in administrative setting, pending the final review of all the information we're compiling. So we take our workforce accountability serious. We take corrective action, and our workforce accountability also includes recognizing positive work and recognizing efforts that are beyond and above. So we look at workforce accountability as a daily practice. and the Office of Internal Affairs and the practice of those reviews is a model practice. In fact, recently, I guess it's been now about a year and a half ago, we reached out to the auditor's office to review our business model on the Office of Internal Affairs. That audit report is lifted on the city's webpage, and you can navigate the city's webpage. If you like, I can send Dominique the report so you guys can look at it. But that's another example of us being open and willing to be held accountable to bringing the auditor in to review. And as I think everybody knows, the auditor works for the city council. He does not work for the city manager or city staff. So we took that as an opportunity to have external review of our work product. In addition, our administrative field guide that details the processes and protocols of those investigations are also one of the many field guides that are on the webpage. And you can, again, see that and review that policy. It's well laid out, and it's well laid out for a reason. That way, our incumbents know that we have a formal process. The citizens know that we will receive complaints, whether it's in person, telephone, or email, or even by letter. We get complaints. I get complaints maybe once a week from an inmate in the jail, a written letter, and we assign those for action too. So we're receptive to those complaints, and we follow them up as best we can. The majority of the complaints oftentimes are or maybe a misunderstanding on what the police can and can't do. For example, oftentimes we get complaints by a citizen who doesn't understand that an officer cannot arrest somebody that came on their property and trespass and was gone by the time the police came. That's what's called a misdemeanor offense that didn't happen in the officer's presence, and there's very limited exceptions where a policeman can do that. So some of those are educating the citizen. Some of those are better communication between the citizen and the police officer. But we thoroughly investigate all those notices that come to our attention.
And lastly, before I end with this topic, I just wanted to lift up that is one of the major concerns that are being spoken around the country. And I think I praise the Virginia Beach Police Department and the way that you present this information to us. And I just want to recommend that we keep in mind that is a great need in the community for them to understand that there is no bias between police trying to protect other officers that may be, coming under scrutiny. Thank you so much.
Let me just add this, Ms. Amberman. The Virginia Beach Police Department is not a perfect organization. I'm reminded this almost on a daily basis. In fact, earlier today, I got an anonymous letter from one of our officers being critical about some action that we took internally. We're not a perfect organization, but we're a learning organization, and we'll take corrective action where we can, as best we can, under the current statutory authorities. And I also remind people, not only do I not want to be painted with the same brush that Minneapolis was painted with and is being painted with, which is they're not a CALEA certified department, but I don't want even the paint from that can on a brush for us.
Thank you. Thank you for your service. We appreciate it.
Yes, ma'am.
I think Farley has her hand up.
I do. Muted. Okay. Hello, and thank you for everything you're doing, and thank you for your time this afternoon. I know that it certainly has been an interesting time during your interim chief responsibility.
I don't know what else is going to happen. We got the pandemic. We've got the reopening of the beach. Working with the governor's office. We've had these, the crisis in Minneapolis, the police reform, and, the 50+ demonstration here. So I'm just hoping there's not a hurricane coming soon.
Right, yeah. Well, my question is, and it may have already been addressed, how much or does our police department do ongoing training? I know, for example, I was speaking with my brothers in law enforcement. We were looking at the Georgia, what happened at the Wendy's, and he said, "Oh, that's just that was poor handcuffing technique." And he mentioned to me that not all police departments have an ongoing training, or do we do that?
So we do, and I stated earlier, our department trains probably about twice as much than the required Department of Criminal Justice. We train annually, and our training evolutions involved legal training, first aid training, scenario-based training, communication training, incident command training. So there's a host of trainings that are mandated by the state, but we do training above and beyond that in all sections. And that's annually. I have a full staff that is responsible for training. We have 3 training sites. Our academy is on Bird Neck Road. And then we have a Creed's training site in the southern part of the city that has an urban village. We're probably one of just less than a handful of police departments in the country that have a training site that replicates an urban environment with, a bank, a convenience store, townhomes, a park. And what we do is we use that training site to do our real life scenario training with simunitions. And then our third training site is up across the line in Moyock at a business called Academy, where we do our firearms training. And that site is a 4,000-acre training site that gives us the availability of not only moving front and back with a firearm, it allows us to move in a 360 fashion through buildings using vehicles and other sorts of barricades to simulate real life scenarios. So we do a lot of training. We've got a lot of support from council because they fund our training budget. And when you talk about training, particularly with the equipment and the firearms, it becomes quite the cost investment. But it's an investment in the community.
Yeah, and it shows. Thank you again for all you're doing. And
yes, ma'am.
Be safe.
Thank you.
Thank you. I have some time.
Yes, thank you. I just want to say one thing. We've got 10 minutes left, and we need to take a vote before Joe has to leave. Can we do that and come back if you don't mind staying a few more minutes afterwards and ask Chief Zakar some more questions? Would that be okay?
It's okay with me. I have a 7 o'clock meeting so I'll be here for a little while.
Yes, we're all going to try and attend that too. So if you don't mind holding your questions, is that okay with everybody? Teresa has her hand up, done. Ron, can you hold your questions until then, Ron?
And Mark has his hand up as well.
And Mark, can you guys hold your questions?
Okay.
Okay, great. David, are you still on the phone?
Yes.
Oh, do you want to present what we did at the awards meeting and?
Sure, and then feel free to correct me because I'm still not entirely sure I grasped all the motions that we had. So essentially, we just voted to not do. Sorry, I have a baby in the background here. We voted to not do the in-person event, and then we had another motion to do a virtual event, of which we haven't figured out the format yet. It will either be, well, it can be anything, but it will probably be one of two things: either our traditional award ceremony just virtually and pre-recorded or something like that, and then another option of doing one geared specifically towards unsung heroes whether that is people working in hospitals or, that sort of thing. So that's what we agreed upon, canceling the in-person, doing something virtual, but the format of which is undecided.
Okay, I understood a little differently that we were going to not do any awards, but everybody that was there, we decided to do no awards, period, and then do something in place of it virtually. Is that what everybody that was there understood? Yeah, that's good.
Just one second, a housekeeping item right now. Everyone who had their virtual hand up to give questions or statements to Chief Sakaro, can you please put your virtual hand down? Jamal and Ron. Okay, Jamal, thank you. Okay, good. So now, Sylvia, Chair Nair Strickland, you were just asking if everyone had, from the awards committee, if everyone had a clear understanding of what motions were presented. Beatrice, I see that you have your hand up. Your mic is now muted.
Yes, and the other thing I can recall is that we also voted that the event will take place during the Human Rights Week, International Human Rights Week in December.
That's true. That is true. I think, and it was difficult, folks. It was our first time voting. So I think what came from that meeting was that we would not do any awards, either in person or virtually, and we would do something to celebrate International Human Rights Week by producing some sort of video that would be like with unsung heroes, all kinds of people who kept our country going and kept us going. Is that what everyone understood? Can I get a from those that were there? Okay. So do the chair would entertain a motion.
Please raise your virtual hand if you would like to. Commissioner Ammerman, your mic is now open.
Yeah, I move that we accept the recommendation of the, do we call it awards committee or? I mean, the recommendation
Yes.
of having the event in December during International Human Rights Week, and that we work with the committee so that they can continue working on our recommendation for the format of that event.
Okay, do I hear a second?
Commissioner Burnsworth?
I second the motion.
Any discussion just on doing away with the awards this year, postponing them?
Sylvia, it's not postponing. We just added a word in there.
It's not postponing, it is, what was the motion? I'm sorry.
Commissioner Amberman?
Your
mic is now open to repeat your motion.
I move that we accept the recommendation of the, tell me the name of the committee, please.
Awards
Committee.
The Awards Committee to have an event to recognize unsung heroes in our community during International Human Rights Week in December.
And to do that instead of the annual awards program.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you. Clarification.
Yes, accept that. Thank you.
I would like to propose a slight change to that by adding in that it will be a virtual recognition.
I think she's saying okay.
Commissioner Amberman, your microphone is now open.
I'm sorry. Yes, I accept that correction.
Thank you.
And Joe, you still second?
Commissioner Burnsworth?
I do.
Thank you.
Any more discussion? Okay, I guess we can call for the vote.
I don't see any. Commissioner Amberman, your hand is still up. Okay, I don't see any other virtual hands up. Chair Neri Strickland.
Yes.
So now I am going to start a roll call vote to cancel the in-person awards committee and replace, have some sort of virtual recognition of unsung heroes during the International Human Rights Week in December. So starting with Commissioner Amberman.
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Heseltine.
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Knight Thompson.
Yes.
Thank you. Vice Chair Jenkott.
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Gunn.
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Burnsworth.
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Stevens.
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Zoberman.
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Taylor. Commissioner Taylor, can you unmute yourself? Commissioner Taylor.
Yes.
Thank you. And Chair Neri Strickland.
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Stanley.
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Kubine.
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Calliot.
Yes.
Thank you. And Commissioner Orencia.
Yes.
Thank you. And we have a total of, oh, did we lose Commissioner Rivera again? I think we did. Okay. Well, hopefully he'll pop back on, but as of right now, we have 14 votes yes for canceling the in-person award ceremony and replacing it with some sort of virtual recognition of unsung heroes in the week of Human Rights Week in December.
Yes, great. Thank you. Thank you very much, commissioners. And if you can, Dominic, get a doodle out right away for everyone to be invited to that meeting and see when we can get together as the awards committee.
Sounds good. Will do.
Having said that, if we can go back to, I see, did Tony come back? Oh, there you are. Yes. Hi. The hands up that had questions for Chief Socorro.
Commissioner Taylor, your mic is now open.
Yes. Is the chief back?
He is.
Yes, Commissioners, Chief Socorro, your mic is now open.
I'm here, Mr. Taylor.
All right. How you doing?
Doing good, thank you. How about you?
All right. Excellent, excellent, excellent. I just want to commend you for the job that you're doing as interim police chief and for your staff and what you do. And follow up what you said was, we have a great police department, but we have not yet arrived, and we still have more work on the horizon for us to do. And one of the things I want to question is, one of the things you briefed us on was recruitment and of minority officers. And one of the things that I think Virginia Beach faced is one of the things that when I was in the military back in the 70s that the Navy faced it was drawing minorities to the Navy, because the Navy had a stigma on being unfriendly to African Americans. But as a young person coming out of the high school ranks, and when I joined the Navy, I reached back. When I came back home, I talked to some of the kids in the neighborhood, and that was maybe 1 or 2 years behind me, and they ended up joining the Navy because I spoke highly of the Navy, and they joined, and I ended up seeing them in the fleet, you know. And I said, "Wow, you joined?" He said, "Yeah, because you enticed me, you encouraged me to join." And I say that to say, and I think you and I have had this discussion along with your predecessor, is that your best recruiting tool is the ones that you have that are serving now. But it, and like I said before, I have interacted with some of them, and their sentiment is that why should I invite someone to come when I feel like I'm being mistreated or treated with biasness? And so we have to, I don't know if your staff have to put one of the things, I can't tell you how to run your department and other things like that. I would as a leader in the military, dealing with all kinds from the juvenile detention where I help lead over there, is that you have to take your uniform off and get to know the individuals that don't look like you to find out why they feel that way. Because if you don't never find out, then they're not going to recruit for you. Somebody has to take that uniform off and interact and be inviting to get to find some of your minority officers feel that way. And I think if you don't do that, you're going to continue with the same problem. Because if they're out there not recruiting, if someone in high school or college say, hey, I want to become off, they say, hey, don't come here. They're going to mistreat you. It's no pay success. Then you need to get to the bottom of it. We need to find out why they're doing it and why they feel that way. So how can you manage something you know nothing about? If you're and the inline supervisors don't know the minorities that they're supervising, I think that's what the problem is. And I think one of the generals back in one of the wars, I may know too much about tactics, war, but I know soldiering. That means he know people. And that's one of the things I encourage this police department to just seek them and find out what can they do, what is the problem. The other thing is, I think, at the round table, the millennials posed a question to you, and some of the African American leaders posed a question to you. Is it any way, and it's dealing with CS gas. It is not a city. It's not a city council or a city manager. That's a departmental policy. The chief or the interim chief have that call whether when they have to deploy irritant, do I use pepper spray or do I use CS gas? That's the chief call because he is the tactical commander. And then if we say that we're not going to use CS gas because CS gas is produced in a pepper spray from natural herb, you can use foam or deploying that deploying that pepper spray. COVID-19, you deploy CS gas, it can affect the immune system and do some damages afterwards. And that's one of the things from the African American community want to know, is there any way we can get that policy change where you deploy that CS gas but use another form of irritant that can help you in your tactical engagement with those that are causing disturbances. But and that's one of the things we're going to ask the human rights to take up also. We're going to ask them to support that.
Okay, you have a question.
Yeah, I'm asking a question. I'm asking a question on that because that question was posed to him because I think, Chief, you said that was your call to use gas.
So let me try to speak to your first observation, Mr. Taylor, and I agree with you. And we've talked about, recruiting and retention efforts, specifically with developing a diverse workforce. It is a challenge. It's not only a local challenge, it's a national challenge. And I'm sensitive to your observations. To that end, we're in the process of scheduling some conversations with the chief. I don't know if I'm going to call it conversations with the chief, but we'll be scheduling some, close conversations with the rank and file where some of those concerns can be voiced. Some of those concerns can be openly discussed. So I hope in the future that we're able to sway some of that internal theme. There's a lot that goes into the workplace satisfaction, workplace being accomplished in a good way. And what we're trying to do is through our professional development program, educate and reward our officers as best we can, and also give them opportunities within the organization where they can self-actuate and get into a program or a department or an activity that they like. So we're listening to you. I don't say that you're telling us how to do it. I would never suggest that. But what I would say is I am welcome to all ideas, strategies, and observations that we can evaluate and assess and then implement for the good of all. Because an investment in your police department, your members, is an investment in the community. Specific to tear gas, this is the second time in my 42 years in this police department that tear gas has been deployed. The first time was during the riots in 1989. This last time was May 31st through the disturbance that was started out as peaceful but didn't end that way. I make that decision. I make that decision with due deliberation, a lot of pondering, and a lot of reflection on how to manage a large, unruly crowd in the worst of times. That was not an easy decision. While I am ultimately responsible for that decision, I did not make it in a vacuum. I had my senior leadership team with me, as well as other persons in the conversation. So I understand the concern. We're looking at different ways on how to manage the crowds, how to better manage the crowds. But at the end of the day, I need to assert that my first responsibility is to ensure our officers are able to protect the community, protect life, and that includes protecting their own sanctity of life. I think our officers performed remarkable under the face of very, very adverse and ugly situations. And despite what some are saying in the community, we were subjected to rocks, bottles, and other items being thrown and tossed at us prior to our officers being told to put on protective equipment and prior to the deployment of gas. And the deployment of gas was only done after the crowd refused to disperse after lawful orders on a loudspeaker. So while the deployment of tear gas is unfortunate, I think if we look at the bottom line on May 31st, the city did not have any buildings burnt down. The city did not lose any municipal buildings. We had several buildings that were damaged on the storefront. We had several persons attempt to set fires to the buildings, set fires to the trash cans. But at the end of the day, we only had 3 injuries. 2 were to officers, and thankfully they were minor. One officer got hit literally in the head and neck with a cinder block. The other twisted his ankle, tripping on something that was thrown. And we had 1 citizen report an injury as a result of a vehicle leaving the area in haste. And thankfully, that citizen was injured with minor injuries, cuts and bruises. So while the use of tear gas is unfortunate, when we look at the crowd dynamics and the volume of people that we were encountering, I think we had a successful outcome. We did not have any reports of persons going to the hospital because of the tear gas. And while the tear gas is a different irritant than the pepper spray, as you spoke on, Ron, it's still a temporary irritant. And that temporary irritant helped restore civil order in a fairly quick time frame.
you know, it just, and I commend, I don't condone any violence against police or citizen. I don't. I don't condone no violence. Anybody that exercises their constitutional right in a peaceful manner, I respect it. But when it comes to violence, looting, or stuff like that, I don't condone. But one thing I do say, it's just like when an officer, like I was military police. Anytime you pull that weapon, what's behind your target? And when you know, my thing is, and some of the African American community leaders look at, did we think about, you know, what was the innocent citizens? What were the damage to them by deploying? If they are walking by our tourists or things like that, if they're around, what damage would it cause them? Also, you have a job to do in your call, and that's what we pay you for. You make the call, and I respect. Is any way that we can go to like pepper spray, which is a natural herb, and a chemical that's made in a lab, which can sometimes does damage to your breathing system.
So that's something certainly worthy of conversation, but also besides the chemical component, there's also the deployment and the dispensing capabilities and the ability to deploy that in a certain direction. So those are things that we can talk about. But, you know, again, at the end of the day, in over 30 years, the police department here has used it twice, and it's been with a very, very difficult decision to do that.
Yeah, and I don't wish that decision on anybody. That's a tough lift there, Chief. And it's a tough lift, I know. And I commend the police department, and I wish no harm to them for serving in tech. And I support the police department, you know, in their work and their effort in serving our community and protecting.
Mr. Taylor, I appreciate your support, not only here this afternoon, tonight, but in all our previous encounters. You've certainly been an advocate of, you know, a modern professional police department, and I appreciate that, Ron.
Yes, sir.
Thank you both. I think we have two more, right?
Yes, we do. Commissioner Stanley?
Yes.
Mic is now open.
Commissioner Teresa Stanley speaking. I too want to commend Chief Sicardo during these very difficult times of your entire career. And the fact that you gave us such a thorough report speaking about our Virginia Beach Police Department being an evolution and learning organization, the things that we cherish the most, to include the self-reflection and improvement, which we've been doing. So I want to really take this opportunity to just lift the testimony of that as one of the people that's been on the productive, constructive table, that pastor, leader, community police relation table that you have been, entire police leadership has been dedicated to for well over 3 years, where because we went through the implicit bias training, which was an intensive training with you, and those 21st century policing best practices were lifted up. We've set goals, which you have done remarkably with. Started, with with the data collection, which we're still working on, the mediation, which has been implemented to be, positive for positive change, the minority recruitment. I'm so excited to see that the paid cadet program has been lifted, and thank you for allowing us to participate and be a part of that, as well as the ongoing trust building, because as we all know, perspectives and perceptions become reality if we don't seek to understand. So I just want to commend you all for doing that, and for all the proactive work to include that the mobile with, as they're talking about defunding police practices, what we're already doing is that putting resources into those clinicians that are on the mobile front line, and 3,300 cases of calls for CIT with more than half the officers trained. That's remarkable in the way of the defunding type activities, because it's integrated. So I just can't commend you enough, and continue to lift the partnership, because it is our police department, And the fact that you all have been so committed to those people who have been there for the duration, meeting and offering the changes and the suggestions, and then even being willing to serve on the oceanfront as independent observers and any other ways that they're called. So I can't say enough, Tony, how grateful I am and how honored I am to continue that partnership, because that's the only way we will evolve professionally.
Well,
Question for you.
thank you for your support, Teresa. We appreciate that.
One last question. The 3,300 calls for CIT, crisis intervention training, what percentage of calls is that annually? Do you have any idea?
So annually we do about 170,000 calls a year, calls for service, about 170,000.
I just know it's a significant number, and so it just shows the integrated services that are needed on our community. So on behalf of
And really that 2.5 hour average for that takes into account all of them. And we had one just the other day where we were with a person for about 2.5 days because of finding beds and finding, other challenges. So it's a system that needs a lot of attention. I think typically a lot of the focus right now is on police reform, but the police department is just one piece of this overall puzzle. And what I try to convey is this is really a community action that needs to be more community oriented for problem solving and looking at the entire structure. And the police are just the first stop and the most visible piece of this criminal justice system. But we're just one slice of the whole overall system.
And because you're the front line, you take all the pressure. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Stanley. Commissioner Gunn, your mic is now open.
Thank you. I'll try to make this brief, but I want to circle back to some comment you mentioned. You mentioned another word when you were talking about defunding of the department. You didn't say exactly defunding. I'm not sure exactly what the word was that you did use.
I might have used dismantling.
Dismantling, yes, I think that was a more appropriate word that I was thinking about, or that should be used, or in light of other comments that have been made. But that's my concern. There's defunding and then there's dismantling, and I think from what I'm understanding, you see the difference between the two. And you said that the department has already taken steps towards those efforts. I'm not sure how much of a concern it is in Virginia Beach right now. I understand having funding for department resources, whether it be body cameras or air or staffing or whatever. I understand that. But my concern, it goes back to comments that the mayor had made in an editorial in a pilot a couple of weeks ago, where he was kind of, I guess, confusing the issue as far as saying that defunding the police meant completely dismantling and removing the police. He cited saying if we imagine not having police on last May 31st in 2019, what would the response have been? And I just think that was a misguided comment where we're not, or the argument is not for like completely removing the police, particularly when they are needed, particularly in cases like that. But again, in like removing certain resources and reallocating resources into certain other structures and certain other departments, and then just simply relying on the police for certain jobs and certain responsibilities. And I think you understood that. But again, my concern was this being communicated to the city leadership as well.
So I think you've touched on a broad topic. From senior leadership's perspective in the police department, the defunding conversation is one of which where the community is looking to reallocate funds and divert what the police do. I've talked at previous meetings about 3 areas. I've talked about homelessness. The community often asks for the police to be better trained when we deal with homelessness. Well, we do, and we established this partnership with Human Services. When we were experiencing the opiate crisis, the community cries for police to be better trained. So we trained our officers to deliver an opiate antidote called Narcan. The community cried for the police to be trained on how to better deal with persons in mental health crisis. So as a result, your police department adopted the CIT program back in 2009. So those are all instances where the police are engaging in non-traditional service deliveries in the homeless arena, in the drug arena, and in the abuse arena, if you will. So I think that's part of the defunding conversation, which to me is much different than some of the national conversation where they're talking about dismantling. And I will let the mayor's editorial speak for the mayor, but I think there's a very big difference between, diverting funds for other resources versus eliminating funds. Now, I will tell you, the police department's budget, even though it's a little over $100 million, about 85% is human capital cost. That's salary compensation. We have very little operational budget flexibility, but it's a national conversation that is ongoing.
Okay.
So our total budget from the city is 5%. The police department is 5% of the total budget, whereas I just saw in the news, New York City Police Department, they had over a $1 billion redirected elsewhere. We're nowhere near that because we don't have the size of New York City Police besides.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Sheriff Severa. I appreciate
He was meant to be cute.
That was just wrong. That was just wrong.
You're not gonna live that one down. I'm not. Stacy just said I'm not gonna live that one down. I'm not. Okay, thank you, Commissioner Gunn. Commissioner Zoberman, you had a statement or question?
Thank you. I had a op-ed piece in the Pilot on Monday, and I mentioned my experience as a police chaplain years ago walking at the beach, and I saw how the police struggle to control a crowd. And I also mentioned in my article the virtue of having a human rights commission in a city. So both things were mentioned in my article on Monday.
Thank you, Rabbi Zoberman.
Thanks for all that you do.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi Zoberman. Commissioner Stevens, you have a question or statement?
Yes. My mic open?
Yes.
Again.
You're good. You're good.
All right. Thank you very much for all the work you're doing. I got to experience 4th of July weekend out there on the ocean front and watch the guys work, and it was very enlightening. They did a great job. They have more patience than I do, I can say that. I was watching how they were being treated and cussed at and yelled at, and I was getting upset. But we watched the whole thing, and your guys handled it great. I hear it's a common thing out there right now. And it was a great report that I just saw. And my question really is, why isn't the public aware of all that you're doing and all the things you have done? Because I think that's the biggest thing. I had a conversation just this morning about the standoff last night, and a gentleman goes, why weren't social workers called? because again, they're not aware of the training that your guys go through. I've dealt with it with what I do, and the word doesn't seem to be out there with all the great things you're doing with your force.
So that's a great question, and I've challenged staff to get into a better position to tell our story. We have a good story to tell. I think once we get our story out there, we will be recognized as a premier law enforcement agency, not only in the state, but nationally. But sometimes it takes time and effort. We're often controlled by the external media. So oftentimes the media manages the message. We're working as best we can with social media tools and building a staff that can access some of the social media forums to start to tell our message. Right now, our position is we want to sit back and listen. We want to be involved in the conversation. I'm working with the media and communications director to formulate some community dialogues. And, you know, we've had various meetings with different folks. So that's part of our challenge. But having advocates in the community, in all sectors of the community, in the faith-based community, in the corporate community, help us get that message out. And that's why one of our department mantras is community engagement, because without the community, we're not going to solve anything. And that's one of the reasons the city of Virginia Beach remains one of the safest cities of our size. It's, yes, we have a well-trained staff, we have good equipment, but we have an excellent community, and the community time and time again rallies around us, and that really shows in the bottom line.
Great.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner Stevens, and thank you, Chief Sakara.
And yes, much praise to you, Chief, for doing that. I don't know how many times you've done it, but we appreciate your abbreviated version and all of the questions and answers. And you'll be able to see Chief Zakara at remind you that the Pastors Leadership Roundtable link was sent to you via email. We're all invited. We are legal. We've been announced so that we can go there and ask questions, and I encourage you to do that. Before we go, are there any citizens' remarks? We've got about 15 minutes. Well, no, I guess a little bit more before the next meeting.
No, we did not get any citizen remarks.
Commissioners' remarks. Anyone have anything to say? You just want to break before the next meeting. Please try and attend the pastor's leadership. Just even if you study, it's only an hour, right, Teresa?
Commissioner Stanley, your microphone is not open. Commissioner Stanley?
It could be as long as an hour and a half.
Okay, but it's just maybe tune in and will. Well, I think that's a wrap. Thank you all very much. Anything, Ginger, you'd like to say?
No, thank you. It's been a pleasure. Great meeting.
Commissioner Gunn, did you have something to say?
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you for your facilitation. You did an excellent job.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. For my first round, I think I did okay.
I think so.
Thank you. Thank you.
And Assistant Attorney General, thank you for hanging in there with us. And if you'd like to join the pastor's leadership, I'm sure they would be glad to hear you.
Assistant Attorney General, your mic is now open.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay.
It was a pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you, Rod, for all your advice. Thank you, everyone. I think it's a wrap. Meeting adjourned.
All right. Thank you. You all have a great evening.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.